Hey YouTube, welcome back to our channel. My name is Elena.
And I'm Björn.
And we are Viking Age reenactors and living historians here to talk with you about your favorite Viking shows.
Today we are taking a look at Vikings Season 6, Part 2, Episode 7.
We are making good your fleet. This place always reminds me of the great shipbuilder Floki. Perhaps all the best ones are gone.
Gold
used to
and all.
say that his ships never butted against the waves like a goat, but moved through them like a ripple. I hope our craftsmen are as skillful as he was.
So I don't think we've ever actually spent the time to talk about Viking ships yet. So Viking ships were really unique. So they were clinker-built ships, which means that they were made up of overlapping strakes, kind of like one over the other, that were then like riveted together. And then oftentimes you see that they were stuffed with like a tarred wool or something, kind of in between each lap to make it a little bit more watertight, basically. The Vikings didn't mill their lumber like we do today. What they would do is actually, especially for building ships, they would find a specific tree that grew in the shape that they needed, and then harvest that wood. When they had the log down, they would then divide it into like fractions and like plane it away and split it along the grain of the wood naturally. So this would create a lot more waste, but it would result in a much stronger board specifically. Because it followed the natural grain of the wood and how it grew naturally, it could flex and bend a lot more without breaking, as opposed to something that was milled and just kind of cut where the grain runs off really quickly and it can, fracture and fall apart and splinter under too much stress. And so because of that, it kind of goes hand in hand with how Floki, way back in the day, kind of explained that his ships would like move through the water like a ripple, and it's because like that's kind of what they would do. The ships, because they were built in that way, they would actually flex and bend and be able to resist the really rough North Sea a lot more than any other ship at the time would.
Right. What is what the beast has on the ships? We've actually seen some really, really good representations of Viking Age ships in the show before.
Definitely.
For most of its run. And I guess my disappointment right now is that they decided to just upend all of that and just redesign the ship beast heads. A couple of the close-ups that we got of the beast heads makes me feel like they're made of metal for whatever reason, or maybe they're metal plated. I have no idea what went on with that. And then they have stag heads on them all of a sudden.
Yeah, right.
With like the big antlers and everything. My first thought with it was maybe they're trying to instill that later age Viking art style that also resulted in like very elongated beast heads and knotwork, as opposed to like the earlier like Bora styles that were like very chunky. So maybe they're trying to infuse a little bit of that into the beast heads here, but at the same time they're doing it in a really bizarre way that likely never existed.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I don't think, there's no examples that I can really recall of them saying that they had like antlers and stag horns and everything like that.
Yeah.
We thank God in his mercy that he has protected Wessex for so long from the depredations of the Vikings and the pagans. Wessex gives thanks to our gracious King Alfred and to the providence of our Lord Jesus
For a second I
Christ.
thought that was Rollo. For a hot second I thought that was Rollo.
No, so did I. Like the same style hair and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He would be gray as at this point, but
Basically
if
just
he's
be a
even
zombie.
alive. So it's not Rollo. We have King Alfred finally in the show. King Alfred is somebody that we talked about at nauseum, I feel like, when we were watching The Last Kingdom, but we can kind of regroup here a little bit. So King Alfred's entrance into the show throws us back a couple of decades. We do have stories of when he fought with Ivar and Halfdan. However, those stories happened before he was king. I think it was a couple of years before he was king in I want to say like 868, and for about 3 years onward, there are several battles that are recorded between them. At the end of which, I believe it was 871 or 872 when King Alfred's brother died and Alfred ascended to the throne as king.
Yeah, right around there.
So we're kind of twisting timelines into a knot here that we have to kind of untwist to like really understand what's going on in the first place. So King Alfred ruled from 871 to 899. The battles that he had that we are about to watch here happened before that rule. So this is actually before Danelaw. This is before Guthrum became Athelstan and made the alliance with King Alfred that created Danelaw in the first place.
Right.
However, we've already had Ubba here who has created an alliance like that.
Yeah.
So we're all kind of twisted up a little bit here.
Yeah. Yeah. To say the least. I feel like I missed out a ton not watching season 5. To get a better understanding of it. Yeah, it seems like a lot of what we've seen so far is pretty much like the show has taken Alfred's history, I guess, and kind of given it to his grandfather, since they really ran with Ragnar's timeline. And then like right after his death is when the Great Heathen Army materialized. But at that time in the show, it was still Alfred's grandfather that was like in control of everything and still, in Wessex. So it seems like he took a lot of the history because of that, and now we're just kind of playing like a weird backpedaling catch-up kind of game. It's kind of a little awkward.
Yeah, we're kind of trying to catch up with it because the last time that they were in England, I believe King Alfred was still a child, is what it was.
I think so.
So yeah, they did kind of give some of his history to his predecessors.
What kind of message does it send out to the rest of Wessex that the king is abandoning his royal villa?
I suppose it sends a message of comparative weakness. And unfortunately, we are weak.
On the topic of what they're getting right in this specific moment, if we are thinking about 868, when Ivar came with Halfdan, they are getting the cast pretty much spot on so far as I'm seeing. So Alfred married Elswith in 868. Right around this time, she would be, a brand new bride for him, which could kind of explain away the scenes of them talking together where she's trying to kind of instill like her own opinions on him. I don't know if new brides in England would specifically do that with kings. She could be trying to kind of like assert that position like immediately and say like, well, here's what I think, here's what I've been observing, and this is what I think you should be doing now that we're together and I'm a queen. So we have that little cast on one side that we know so far. I'm sure we're going to meet a lot more of their surrounding court in the coming couple of episodes, maybe. But then on the other side, we also have Ivar and we have Vitzerk. And we mentioned this last week, I believe, or a couple of weeks ago, that there's a general belief within the academic circles that Vitzerk was actually Halfdan. That the two are the same character.
Right.
And in the stories or in the history that's written down, it was Halfdan that was with Ivar during these battles that we're about to watch.
Absolutely.
With King Alfred. So they're getting that part right, at least. They're buying into the idea that Vitzerk is Halfdan, so they're kind of giving him Halfdan's side of history. And one other important thing to note is we've been saying for ages now, this is basically where Ivar dies. He died about 3 years after this. Or at least
it's believed.
It's believed according to some stories. If the belief is that he died in England, this is kind of where he makes his bed.
Yeah. It's very vague.
Okay, so this reminds me of a significantly more bloody and gory version of what happened in Eagle's Saga.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I think we've talked about that scene in Egil Saga before in some past episode, but basically there was this woman who was sick, laying in bed, and there was like a runic inscription on like a tusk or a bone or something that was put under her bed to help cure her, but because the runes were written incorrectly, it was like making her more sick. So the whole like slipping it under the pillow at night, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it definitely is leaning on this example from Egil Saga a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's kind of it always frustrates me a little bit with these scenes, but at the same time, I'm like, I have to fight myself to not be frustrated because, like, we know so little about Seiðr and how it was performed. Like, we can't really say, you know, it was this way or it wasn't. You know, just because there isn't really that much information on it. You know, we do know Seiðr is primarily a feminine magical practice, typically done by like a soul practitioner in most cases. Sometimes it required a group effort. I think there was a scene in Erik the Red saga where there was like a group chanting and like a gathering of people kind of like providing assistance to some things. It can be used to help or to hinder, you know, curse foes and blight battlefields, kind of thing like that, absolutely. I think Dr. Neil Price even says there might have been some kind of like a sexual implication as well, or like some kind of like sexual act as a requirement for certain aspects of it. And that does make sense. Because in certain examples, we actually, in the sagas, in the Icelandic sagas, we do get some references to a little bit of like a sexual kind of connotation to how it was performed, or like a specific thing that the Vola had to do to cast the spell, essentially. I think there's one example, I can't remember which saga, it might have been Laxendale saga, but I think there was one where like she had to like hike up her dress and like bend over, like staring at a dude through her legs while walking backwards. Like it was this weird.
That's not creepy at all.
Yeah. Yeesh. Like people thought that like the ring girl like crab walking towards you was weird. Like just wait till you read the sagas.
What is it? Erik,
It's my eye.
show me.
I can't see.
What's happened to you?
I don't know.
Now on to the story of Erik the Red. Obviously it never happened to him in the sagas.
Nope.
A lot of this, and I'm assuming anything that follows, is make-believe. I don't even know if he has children in the
this?
show. Yeah.
I have no idea. We haven't seen any.
Yeah, because so Erik the Red is the father of Leif Erikson, who is going to be sailing to Vinland. Not even after his death. I think he's still alive when Vinland was founded.
Yep.
But he settled in Greenland himself after being expelled from multiple countries. So yeah, his story in this is just completely way off base. He was never blinded by a vulva. He was expelled from Norway and expelled from Iceland, so it would make more sense for his character to be in Greenland at this point.
Absolutely.
Or at least in Iceland at this point.
I think they kind of briefly in passing referenced him being like an exile.
Yeah, they did.
Just in like that weird nickname that they gave him.
Yeah.
The Skagamo or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they explained it at one point, like very briefly when he met Björn. Mm-hmm. But I can't really remember the story too much. But like he wouldn't be in Norway at all at this point.
Chloe!
What? What? I can't see.
Oh, you too?
Can't you see, Mom?
surprise, you're in Finland. Okay, and we have land.
We have land. Do we know how long they've been at sea for?
Nope.
I feel like we don't really have any kind of like really like constructed timeline for like what they've been doing. Like the last couple episodes, I feel like we've just seen them just like miserable in a boat.
Basically, I think it's been like 3 episodes or something since they sailed away from Greenland.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's like it's hard to say how long it's been. Like it almost seems like it's been weeks at a time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really difficult to tell, and it's kind of frustrating because in the Greenlander sagas, when you read about the trip that Leif took when he found Vinland, basically, it never states how long that trip was. In both of the sagas,
Right.
really. Like, neither of them. They're just like, oh, he just got on a boat and had favorable winds and found land. All right, cool. I mean, in one of them, I'm pretty sure he's sailing from Norway instead of Greenland too. So it's a whole thing. So the closest that we get to learning about how long the journey would take is actually Bjarne's journey that he takes. This is before Leif's time. He kind of sails off course, and I believe in the saga it says that he's out at sea for about 3 days, and then he spots land, and he's asked whether it's Greenland or not, and he goes, nah, it's not, let's just keep going. And then they sail and they find about 3 different lands, all at different time intervals. One is like 2 weeks, one is 4 days. And eventually he sees land that he deems to be Greenland, so that's where they land, basically. There's no saying really exactly which way they sail. They just keep bouncing around and finding land randomly.
Right.
So one of them could have been Vinland. At one point he does go back to Norway and report to the king that he has found this lush land, that he has sighted it. But he didn't land there, basically. He's just like, I'd like to undertake that journey, or somebody should undertake that journey. And that's where Leif comes in afterwards. So it's really difficult to like really tell from the sagas, at least, how long it would take them to get from Greenland to Vinland. I think if you do a quick Google search on it, it will tell you 2 weeks, but I don't know exactly what boat they're sailing on.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like a right amount of time for me.
No, definitely not.
And over here, the big thing that they're struggling with is water. Of course, they can try to fish around the boat and everything like that, and that's what they were doing for a
Yeah, we
little
saw
bit of
him
time.
casting out the reels and
Yeah.
having not much luck.
Yeah. But even past that, you can survive without food for weeks, but you can't survive without water for more than a few days.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That's what they're really struggling with, is that water. But yeah, I mean, that's a good question, is how long have they been out there and how long have they been like thirsting for fresh water, basically.
Yeah.
I would imagine they should plan that trip a little bit better. But they did kind of escape a madman.
Yeah, I mean, it just frustrates me a bit, because I know I've talked about this before and stuff, but even still, like, if they would just follow the coastline, it would solve so many problems. Because, like, even if they're trying to escape from Hieto and his crazed family, like, all they have to do is just sail out, like, 50, 100 feet in the water, and then just drop anchor and wait it out. Like, wait for him to fall asleep or, like, die, you know, like...
Come back, grab the whale.
Yeah, totally. Just, like, send out, like, 2 or 3 dudes every night to just, like, carve a chunk out of it. Come back. 30 feet, even. Just, like, enough to taunt them. Enough to shout insults back and forth. I would have had so much fun with it. But no, now they're struggling for their lives.
So yeah, on the surface, there wasn't that much that happened this episode, story-wise.
Yeah.
I think we touched on most of what's happening, but generally it seems to be like a lot of just quick scenes building up to the ending.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're now at like the end phase, I feel like, of the shuffling pieces around, because like we spent so much time just like waiting for people to get places or to figure out what they were doing, and now, you know, the the lost at sea people have finally found a coastline. Vitsark and Ivar have finally decided and immediately traveled to England, like they're there. So things are like now going to start happening, I feel like.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the next 3 episodes should be packed
I hope so.
with stuff, because there is still plenty for them to do.
Yeah.
Whether or not they do that is up to them. He would be angrily building a church in Greenland with like the worst case of blue balls. Much amaze. Very history. But the runes were carved. Anyways, great, cool. Bye. See us next time.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you can be notified of our future videos. And we will see you in the next one.